Israel has been given the task of being the new and true humanity for the sake of the nations, to be what Adam and Eve had failed to be. In the words of the Sinai covenant, a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. And yet, as the event of the golden calf has shown, they had a long way to go to be liberated from the idolatry of Egypt, to display God's glory and creational intention before the nations. God's formation of his people continues in the books of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Leviticus shows us how sinful Israel may maintain a covenant relationship with their holy God. He gives them priests who will mediate on their behalf and sacrifices that will atone for sin and restore the relationship. He gives them laws to distinguish the holy and the profane, as well as social legislation to form them into a holy people. Israel would learn how to be a holy people in the whole of their lives. In obedience to God's command, be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Israel had been formed by the Lord for their task, liberated from Egyptian idolatry to serve God, given their vocation, given the law to shape them into the new humanity for the sake of the nations, and given God's own presence with them in the tabernacle, and now more laws to form them into a holy people. What remains is for them to receive the land, the stage on which they will play out their assigned role. They should have reached their home quickly from Sinai, but sadly the story told in Numbers is that Israel is not ready for this last promise to be fulfilled. Their lives are still characterized by unbelief and disobedience, as the writer to Hebrews describes them in chapter 3. Thus they are judged by God and wander 40 years in the wilderness where the first generation dies. But the good news is that God remains faithful to his people. The warning of judgment and continued faithfulness and care of God prepares the next generation to enter the land and take up their calling. As they wait on the plains of Moab on the threshold of the promised land, Moses delivers 3, what we might call sermons, to prepare Israel to enter the land. These 3 addresses by Moses make up the book of Deuteronomy. In the first, Moses reminds Israel of God's covenant faithfulness and care despite their disobedience. In the second, by far the longest, Moses revisits in greater detail the law that God had given them as a covenant people. If they are to love the Lord their God in covenant faithfulness, they will shape their entire lives according to God's law. The nations are meant to see Israel as a just and holy people, an example of what human culture should look like, so that those nations will want to know the God who shapes Israel in their way of life. Israel is warned that pagan idolatry will be a constant threat to their lives, and thus to God's blessing on them. In the final sermon, Moses holds up before them 2 options, as we can see from this diagram. Either faith and obedience to the Torah as a way of true life with the promise of prosperity and blessing, or unbelief and disobedience in the way of pagan idolatry with the threat of death, destruction, and the curse attending. In a moving final scene, the aged Moses urges his people to choose life. Only along this way will they experience the life God intended in creation, and only thus will they be able to fulfill their calling to the nations.